I stood in the lobby of our flagship Serene Suites Hotel in downtown Denver, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as security escorted Marcus out of the building. He was shouting something, his face red, his expensive suit rumpled from struggling against the guards. Vanessa trailed behind him, her designer heels clicking frantically on the marble floor, her phone pressed to her ear. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother, James. "Claire, what's happening? Marcus said you've lost your mind. Mom and Dad are freaking out." I didn't respond. I just watched as Marcus reached his Porsche, the one he'd bought last month with what I now knew was embezzled company funds. He turned back to stare at the building, at me standing in the window. Even from here, I could see the hatred on his face. Dead weight. That's what he'd called me 3 weeks ago, not knowing I was listening outside the conference room. This company outgrew Claire years ago. She's dead weight, and it's time to cut her loose. I took a sip of my coffee and smiled. Let me tell you how we got here. 12 years ago, I met Marcus at a hospitality conference in Chicago. I was 26, fresh off a small inheritance from my grandmother, $3 million that felt like both a blessing and a burden. I'd been working in hotel management for 4 years, dreaming of creating something different. Boutique hotels with soul, I used to say. Places where guests felt like they were staying in a carefully curated home, not a corporate box. Marcus was 30, charming, full of ideas and energy. He had the operational expertise I lacked. The business degree from Wharton. The connections in the industry. We talked for 6 hours that night, sketching concepts on cocktail napkins, finishing each other's sentences. By the end of the conference, we decided to become partners. My grandmother's money became our seed capital. We found a beautiful old building in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood, a 1,922 mansion that had been chopped into apartments. Marcus handled the construction and operations. I handled the design and guest experience. 18 months later, Serene Suites Denver opened with 16 rooms and a Michelin-recommended restaurant. We were profitable within 8 months. Within 3 years, we'd opened a second location in Boulder. Then Aspen. Then Telluride. 4 boutique properties, each unique, each wildly successful. Marcus became like a brother to me. We spent more time together than I spent with my actual family. We finished each other's sentences during pitch meetings. We celebrated every win with champagne in the rooftop bar. We weathered every crisis side by side. The company was valued at $8 million last spring. Marcus owned 45%. I owned 55%, reflecting my initial capital investment. We'd just started planning our 5th property, a historic building in Colorado Springs. Everything was perfect. That's what I thought, anyway. The first sign came in April. Marcus hired a consultant named Vanessa without discussing it with me first. When I questioned him about it, he waved me off. "She's brilliant. Claire. MBA from Stanford, worked with Marriott's expansion team. We need someone like her if we're going to scale." Vanessa was 32, polished, and immediately started sitting in on meetings I'd always attended. She'd interrupt me with phrases like, "Actually, the data shows," or "best practices in the industry indicate." She spoke in corporate jargon that felt alien to everything we'd built. Marcus started deferring to her. In June, they flew to a hospitality conference in Miami without inviting me. When I asked about it, Marcus said, "It was last minute, Claire. Besides, it was mostly operational stuff. Not really your area." Not my area? I'd co-founded this company. I'd designed every property, cultivated relationships with every key vendor, built our brand from nothing. But suddenly, I was being edged out of conversations, left off email chains, finding out about decisions after they'd been made. My assistant, Rachel, started looking uncomfortable whenever Vanessa came up in conversation. Finally, in early July, she closed my office door and sat down. "Claire, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but..." She twisted her hands in her lap. "Last week, I was working late. Marcus and Vanessa were in his office. The door was ajar. I heard them. They were talking about you. Planning something." "Planning what?" I couldn't hear all of it, but I heard Marcus say, "We need to move before the Series B round." And Vanessa said something about dilution and operating agreements. Then Marcus said, he said, "She built something beautiful, but she can't take it to the next level. She's dead weight." The words hit me like ice water. Dead weight. 12 years of partnership, of trust, of building something together, and that's what I'd become to him. There's more, Rachel continued, her voice barely a whisper. 2 days ago, your brother James came by. He met with Marcus for an hour. I don't know what they discussed, but when James left, he and Marcus shook hands. It looked formal. Like a deal. I sat very still. James had never shown interest in the business before. He worked in tech, always kept his distance from what he called my hotel hobby. Why would he be meeting with Marcus? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my loft apartment, the one I'd bought when the first hotel succeeded, staring at the ceiling. Dead weight. The words kept echoing. At 3 a.m, I got up and started digging. I had access to all company accounts, all files. Marcus probably assumed I never looked at the operational details anymore. He was wrong. I'd always been involved. I just did it quietly. I started with our financial records, going back 6 months. The first irregularity was subtle, consulting fees to Vanessa's LLC that seemed high. Then I noticed expense reports from Marcus that didn't match his calendar. Flights to Miami, yes, but also to the Cayman Islands. Twice. Dinners at high-end restaurants in Denver, charged to the company, on nights when Marcus had told me he was visiting family in Connecticut. I dug deeper. There were vendor invoices that seemed inflated. A construction project at our Aspen property that had cost 40% more than the quote. When I cross-referenced, I found the contractor was an LLC registered to someone named Brian Wells. A quick search showed Brian Wells shared an address with Vanessa's LLC. They were embezzling. Not huge amounts, but steady. Maybe $200,000 over the past 8 months. Enough to be criminal, but small enough to hide in the rapid growth of a successful company. My hands were shaking as I made copies of everything. Then I kept digging. In a shared folder I rarely accessed, I found a document titled Restructuring Proposal, Confidential. I opened it. The proposal was detailed and devastating. It outlined a plan to bring in additional investors before our Series B funding round. These investors would purchase new shares, diluting my ownership from 55% to 38%, while Marcus's shares would remain protected. With my ownership below 40%, I'd lose my majority shareholder status. The proposal included removing me from day-to-day operations, transitioning me to a brand ambassador role, and eventually buying out my shares at a fair market value that was suspiciously low. The list of proposed new investors made my stomach drop. James Whitmore, my brother. Sarah Whitmore, my mother. The Whitmore Family Trust, controlled by my parents. My own family was part of the plan to push me out. I spent the rest of that night reading every document in the folder. There were emails between Marcus and Vanessa going back to January. They'd been planning this for 7 months. They'd identified my family as targets because, as Vanessa wrote, Claire is extremely close to her family. If they're on board, she'll be less likely to fight the restructuring. There were draft investment agreements showing my family would invest $500,000 in exchange for equity. $500,000 they'd lose if the company went under or if the deals fell through before paperwork was finalized. The agreements weren't signed yet, but they were scheduled to meet with Marcus and Vanessa the following week to finalize details. My phone rang at 7 a.m. It was my mother. Claire, honey, your father and I want to talk to you about something exciting. We're having dinner this Sunday at the house. James will be there too. We have a wonderful opportunity to discuss. What kind of opportunity, Mom? Oh, I don't want to spoil the surprise. Her voice was bright, cheerful. Just trust me, you're going to be so pleased. Marcus has been wonderful, keeping us in the loop about the business. We had no idea how much potential Serene Sweets has. Marcus has been keeping you in the loop. My chest tightened. What has Marcus told you? Just that there are opportunities for family investment. That you'd been so busy with the creative side that you maybe hadn't noticed how much the company has grown. That it's time to bring in people who really understand hospitality at scale. She paused. Honey, we're so proud of what you've built, but Marcus thinks you might be stretched too thin. Maybe it's time to let other people handle some of the business side, so you can focus on what you do best. The pretty parts. The pretty parts. Like I was playing with dollhouses while the adults did real work. I'll be at dinner Sunday, I said quietly. Wonderful. And Claire? Maybe don't mention this to Marcus. He wanted it to be a surprise, you know. He's been working so hard on these investment packages. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called someone I'd hoped I'd never need to call. David Chen, the most aggressive corporate attorney in Denver. David had represented a friend during a brutal business divorce 2 years ago. He was expensive, ruthless, and exactly what I needed. "Tell me everything," he said when we met that afternoon in his office. I did. I showed him the financial records, the embezzlement evidence, the restructuring proposal, the emails. David's expression grew darker with each document. "They're idiots," he said finally. "They documented everything. The embezzlement alone could get Marcus criminally charged. But the real leverage is this. You still own 55%, and you're the majority shareholder. As long as those new investment agreements aren't signed, you have total control. What can I do?" David leaned back in his chair. "You can do almost anything. Call an emergency board meeting. Remove Marcus as an officer. Freeze company accounts. Change locks on the properties. All of it, as long as you act fast." He paused. "The question is, what do you want?" I thought about 12 years of partnership. Of trust. Of building something beautiful together. Of Marcus calling me dead weight. Of my own family preparing to betray me for equity shares and Marcus's lies. "I want them out," I said. "All of them. And I want Marcus to face consequences for the embezzlement." David smiled. "Then let's get to work." The next 5 days were a blur of preparation. David and I built an airtight case. We gathered every piece of evidence of Marcus's financial misconduct. We documented every inappropriate expense, every suspicious invoice, every payment to shell companies. We prepared articles of removal, drafted new operating agreements, arranged for new locks and security codes at all 4 properties. We also hired a private investigator. Within 48 hours, she confirmed what I'd suspected. Marcus and Vanessa weren't just business partners. They'd been having an affair for 5 months. She had photos of them at restaurants, entering Vanessa's apartment together, spending weekends at our Aspen property when it was supposedly closed for maintenance. The affair itself didn't matter for business purposes, but it added another layer to their betrayal. Marcus had a wife, Rebecca. They'd been married for 15 years. I'd been to their house for dinner dozens of times. Rebecca had been nothing but kind to me. "Does Rebecca know?" I asked the investigator. "I don't think so. She works long hours as a surgeon. Marcus has been careful." That was another conversation I'd need to have. Later. Sunday arrived. I drove to my parents' house in Cherry Creek, a beautiful colonial where I'd grown up. James's Tesla was already in the driveway. I sat in my car for a moment, steadying my breathing. When I walked in, everyone was in the living room. Mom, Dad, James, and surprisingly, my sister Emma, who I hadn't expected. Emma was a tax attorney, sharp as a knife. She and I had always been close. "Claire." Mom jumped up to hug me. "We're so excited to talk to you. Before we start," I said, "I need to know. Have any of you signed anything yet? Any investment agreements, any contracts?" James and my father exchanged glances. "No," Dad said. "Marcus said the documents are being finalized this week. We're meeting with him and Vanessa on Wednesday to sign everything and transfer the funds." $500,000, I said. "That's what you're planning to invest." Mom blinked. "How did you know?" "Because I'm still the majority owner of Serene Suites, and I have access to all company files." I sat down, looking at each of them. "Tell me what Marcus told you." "Everything." What followed was worse than I'd imagined. Marcus had painted a picture of a company on the verge of explosive growth, but held back by my creative temperament and resistance to professional management. He'd told them I was brilliant at design but out of my depth with business operations. That the company needed adult supervision to reach its potential. That bringing in family investors would help me see reason and step back gracefully. He'd also implied, carefully, that I'd been making poor decisions. Overspending on design elements. Resisting profitable opportunities. Getting emotional during business discussions. "He said you'd been struggling," my mother said softly. "That you'd been stressed, maybe depressed. That you needed family support to help you transition to a role that wouldn't overwhelm you." I felt like I'd been slapped. Marcus had been systematically poisoning my family against me, setting up a narrative where pushing me out was an act of love. Let me tell you what's really happening, I said, and I laid it all out. The embezzlement. The restructuring plan. The fact that their investment would dilute my shares below majority, giving Marcus control. The shell companies, the fake invoices, the Cayman Islands accounts. Emma, the attorney, had been silent, but as I talked, her expression changed. She pulled out her phone and started taking notes. Do you have documentation? I handed her a folder I'd prepared. She read through it, her face growing paler. This is fraud. This is actual criminal fraud. James was shaking his head. No. No. Marcus wouldn't do this. Claire, are you sure you're not misinterpreting things? Maybe there's a reasonable explanation. A reasonable explanation for fake invoices? For embezzlement? Emma's voice was sharp. James, look at these documents. This isn't ambiguous. Marcus said Claire had been paranoid lately, James said, but his voice was uncertain now. He said she'd been seeing problems that weren't there. Of course he did, I said. That's what you do when you're setting someone up. You make them look unstable first. My father had been quiet, reading through the documents Emma passed to him. He was a retired accountant, and I could see him processing the numbers. Finally, he looked up at me. Claire, I owe you an apology. A significant one. His voice was heavy. I should have come to you first. I should have asked you directly about the business. Instead, I let Marcus. He trailed off. I let my excitement about being part of your success cloud my judgment. We all did, my mother whispered. She looked devastated. Oh, Claire. We almost helped them steal from you. You haven't signed anything yet, I said. And I need you to keep it that way. On Wednesday, when you meet with Marcus and Vanessa, I need you to act like everything is fine. Tell them you need a few more days to review with your attorney, use Emma as an excuse. Can you do that? Emma nodded immediately. Absolutely. And I want to see these investment agreements. If they're as problematic as I think, there might be fraud charges just for attempting to sell securities based on false information. What are you going to do? James asked. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Friday, I said. I'm removing Marcus as an officer and freezing all company accounts. I'm also reporting the embezzlement to the authorities. My mother looked stricken. Claire. He'll lose everything. His reputation, his career. He should have thought of that before he stole from the company and tried to push me out. I stood up. I need to know. Are you with me, or with Marcus? With you, Emma said immediately. Obviously. My parents and James nodded, though James still looked shell-shocked. Good. He should be. They all should be. As I drove home, my phone rang. It was Rebecca, Marcus's wife. Claire, I need to talk to you, she said. Her voice was tight. Are you free for coffee? We met at a Starbucks near her hospital. Rebecca looked exhausted, still in her scrubs from a shift. She ordered an espresso and got straight to the point. Marcus is having an affair, isn't he? I didn't know what to say. Rebecca and I had never been close friends, but we'd always been friendly. I didn't want to be the one to confirm her worst fears, but I also wouldn't lie to her. Yes, I said quietly. I'm sorry. She nodded. Like she'd expected it. With that consultant. Vanessa. How did you know? I'm not stupid, and I'm a surgeon. I notice details. She took a sip of her espresso. The late nights, the mysterious conferences, the way he's been dressing differently. But it's more than that, isn't it? Something's wrong with the business. I hesitated, but Rebecca deserved to know. Over the next half hour, I told her everything. Not to hurt her, but because she was about to be collateral damage, and she deserved to prepare. When I finished, Rebecca was silent for a long moment. Then she said, I want a divorce. Immediately. And I want to make sure none of his legal problems become my legal problems. You should talk to David Chen, I said, and gave her his contact information. He's handling my case, but he can recommend someone for family law. Rebecca stood up. Thank you for telling me. And Claire? Destroy him. He deserves it. Friday morning arrived. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock at our downtown Denver hotel. Our board was small, me, Marcus, and two outside advisors who'd been with us since the beginning. Both advisors were people I'd brought in, and both had already expressed concerns about Marcus's recent behavior when I'd called them earlier in the week. Marcus didn't know about the meeting. David had made sure the notice was sent to Marcus's business email at 8 o'clock Thursday night, giving him the legally required minimum notice period. By the time Marcus saw it Friday morning, it was too late to prepare. I arrived at the hotel at 9:30. David was already there, along with Rachel and the new head of security I'd quietly hired earlier in the week. We went to the conference room and set up. Marcus arrived at 9:55, Vanessa trailing behind him. The moment he saw David, his face went pale. "What is this, Claire?" "This is a board meeting," I said calmly. "I sent you notice last night, as required by our operating agreement. Please sit down. I don't know what you think you're doing, but sit down, Marcus. Or leave, and I'll proceed without you." He sat. Vanessa tried to sit next to him, but David shook his head. "Miss Laurent isn't on the board and hasn't been invited to this meeting. She needs to leave. She's our consultant. She needs to leave," I repeated. "Now." Security stepped forward. Vanessa left, her heels clicking angrily on the floor. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. I presented every piece of evidence we'd gathered. The embezzlement, the fake invoices, the shell companies, the Cayman Islands transfers. Marcus tried to interrupt, to explain, to justify, but the numbers didn't lie. The board advisors looked sick. One of them, Patricia, had been a mentor to me for years. "Marcus, this is criminal," she said. "This isn't just bad business, this is theft." "It's not what it looks like," Marcus said. He was sweating now. "Those were legitimate business expenses. The consulting fees are paid to shell companies you control," David interrupted. "We have the corporate registration documents. We have bank statements showing the money flowing from Serene Suites to the shell companies to your personal accounts. This isn't ambiguous." I placed another folder on the table. "This is the restructuring proposal you and Vanessa created. The one where you plan to dilute my shares below majority and push me out of the company I founded. The company I funded with my inheritance. The one you've been calling me dead weight behind my back." Marcus's face went from pale to red. "You went through my files? They're company files. I have every right to access them." I looked at him across the table, this man I'd trusted like a brother. "You tried to steal my company, Marcus. You embezzled funds. You've been lying to my family, trying to get them to invest money that would help you take control. And you did it all while telling me we were partners. This company wouldn't exist without me," he said, his voice rising. "You had some money and some pretty ideas, but I built the operations. I built the systems. I made this work." "You did," I agreed. "And I valued that. I valued you. But somewhere along the way, you decided that wasn't enough. You decided you deserved more, even if it meant destroying our partnership and stealing from the company." I looked at Patricia and our other board member, Thomas. "I'm calling for a vote to remove Marcus from his position as COO and as an officer of the company. I'm also moving to terminate his employment agreement effective immediately, for cause based on the financial misconduct documented here." "This is insane," Marcus said. "You can't just." "I can, actually," I said quietly. "I'm the majority shareholder. And the evidence is overwhelming." Patricia and Thomas voted with me. The motion passed unanimously, minus Marcus's vote. "You need to leave," I said. "Security will escort you from the building. Your access to all systems has been revoked. Your company credit cards have been cancelled. You have 1 hour to collect your personal items from your office under supervision." "You're making a huge mistake," Marcus said, standing up. His hands were shaking. "You can't run this company without me. You'll fail within 6 months. I guess we'll see." As security escorted him out, Marcus turned back one more time. "I made you, Claire. Everything you have because of me. You're nothing without me." "No," I said. "I made us. With my money, my vision, my work. You just helped. And then you tried to take it all." The door closed behind him. I sat in the conference room for a long moment, feeling simultaneously exhausted and electrified. David touched my shoulder. "Phase 1 complete," he said. "Now comes Phase 2. The criminal complaint. We'd already prepared it. David filed it that afternoon with the Denver District Attorney's Office. The evidence was so clear that the DA's office opened an investigation immediately. Monday morning, I called a company-wide meeting at the Denver hotel. All our employees. From all 4 properties. I stood in front of them and explained what had happened, careful to stick to facts and not emotions. Marcus is no longer with the company. I've taken over as CEO, and we're in the process of hiring a new COO. I know this is shocking, and I know you probably have questions. What I can tell you is that financial misconduct was discovered, and it's now being handled by law enforcement. The company itself is healthy and stable, and your jobs are secure. Rachel started the applause. Others joined in. A few people looked worried, but most seemed relieved. Marcus had become increasingly difficult to work with over the past months, and apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd noticed. That afternoon, I met with candidates for the COO position. I hired Sarah Winters, a hotel operations expert who'd worked with Four Seasons for 15 years. She was professional, experienced, and had zero interest in power games. "I'm here to help you build what you want to build," she said in her interview. "Not to take over." She started the following week. The fallout was messy. Marcus hired a lawyer and tried to fight his termination. But David had documented everything so carefully that his case fell apart within days. The DA's office pressed charges for embezzlement and fraud. Marcus was arrested at his home. And the story made the local news. Vanessa disappeared. Turned out her credentials were partially fabricated. The Stanford MBA was real, but she'd been fired from her previous position for ethics violations. She'd seen Marcus as her ticket to owning part of a successful company. When it fell apart, she cut her losses and left town. Rebecca filed for divorce and made sure everyone knew why. Marcus lost his house, his reputation, and most of his assets in the settlement. My family struggled with guilt. My parents couldn't stop apologizing. James took it hardest. He'd been Marcus's biggest supporter, and the betrayal hit him hard. "I should have trusted you," he said one night over dinner. "You're my sister. I should have come to you first." "Yes," I said. "You should have. Can you forgive me?" "Eventually," I said honestly. "But it's going to take time." Emma, on the other hand, became my fiercest advocate. She'd always been protective, but after this, she was like a guard dog. She helped me restructure the company's legal protections, advised on the criminal case, and made sure my family understood exactly how close they'd come to losing $500,000. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of our 5th property in Colorado Springs. The renovation had been completed under budget and ahead of schedule. Sarah had proven to be exactly what the company needed: organized, efficient, and content to let me focus on the vision while she handled the operations. The property was beautiful. A 1,890 hotel restored to its original grandeur, with modern amenities hidden behind period details. Every room told a story. The bar served craft cocktails with local ingredients. The restaurant had already gotten buzz from food critics. At the opening party, Patricia came up to me with a glass of champagne. "You did it," she said. "You didn't just survive, you thrived." "We thrived," I corrected. "This was always a team effort." "Yes, but you're the one who had the courage to fight when it mattered." She clinked her glass against mine. "To dead weight." I laughed. "To dead weight." My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Marcus's trial date is set. 3 months from now." I put the phone away and looked around at the hotel lobby filled with people celebrating. Employees who'd stuck with me. Investors who'd believed in the company's future. My family, trying hard to rebuild trust. Sarah, already talking to potential partners about property number 6. Marcus was right about one thing: the company had outgrown what we'd started with 12 years ago. But he was wrong about who was dead weight. The company didn't outgrow me. It outgrew him. His greed, his betrayal, his willingness to destroy something beautiful for personal gain. I'd built Serene Suites from nothing. I'd funded it with my inheritance, designed every property, cultivated every relationship, weathered every crisis. Marcus had been my partner, yes, but I was never just the creative one playing with pretty things. I was the founder, the majority shareholder, the vision behind everything we'd created. And when he tried to take it from me, I fought back. Not with emotion or drama, but with evidence, legal action, and strategic thinking. I protected what was mine. I exposed his crimes. I removed him from the company before he could destroy it. Now, standing in this beautiful hotel, surrounded by success, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Emma. "Just saw Marcus at the grocery store. He's working as an assistant manager now. He saw me and literally turned around and walked the other way. I smiled and put my phone in my pocket. Dead weight indeed. The company Marcus thought I couldn't run without him was thriving. We'd just been approached by a major hospitality group about a partnership for national expansion. Our revenue was up 30%. Employee satisfaction scores were at an all-time high. And Marcus? Marcus was exactly where he belonged. Facing criminal charges, divorced, blacklisted in the industry, working retail to pay his legal fees. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic. It's simply building something so successful, so beautiful, so undeniably yours that everyone who doubted you has to watch you thrive without them. I thought about 12 years ago, sitting in that Chicago conference room, sketching ideas on cocktail napkins with someone I thought was going to be my lifelong partner. That partnership was over. But the dream? The vision of creating beautiful spaces where guests felt at home? That was just getting started. And this time, I was building it with people I could actually trust. I raised my champagne glass to the room, to the future, to everything I'd fought for and won. To Serene Sweets, I said. Everyone cheered. And somewhere across town, in a grocery store, Marcus was probably restocking shelves and thinking about what he'd lost. I hoped he remembered what he'd called me. Dead weight. The weight that built an empire while he fell apart.